telling you that uh, Socrates here is not the philosopher Socrates. I think somebody is unmuted there and some noise is heard. Socrates here does not mean the philosopher Socrates, but it is one of those characters created by Plato in his book Republic. I told you that. So what does he say? It's not an art. It is poetry is not an art. It's a form of divine madness, and the whole slide basically speaks or tries to argue on that particular point, how it is divine madness, and ends with the metaphor of magnet and how God inspires an artist. So how does he go about defining a poet? Poet is an airy thing, winged and holy, and he is not able to make poetry until he becomes inspired and goes out of his mind. So that was a question that Ashwati had asked: how someone becomes or gets
Sir,
inspired. Yes, yes, Kaushik.
sir, your voice is fluctuating, sir. It's going low a bit again. It's higher.
I think. Okay, fine. Let's see how it goes. Okay, Kaushik.
Okay. Sir, can you again repeat the last point?
Okay, so poetry. Plato defines poet as an airy thing, winged and holy, and he is not able to make poetry until he becomes inspired and goes out of his mind. Uh, that was a question that was asked by Ashwati as to how someone can get inspired and still go out of one's mind. Now there are two things there. Inspiration, it's always external to an individual. It's not something that comes from within. Inspiration, you always get inspired from an external force, an external entity, an external element. It's you don't get inspired by yourself, or in the sense you don't get inspired by looking at your own personality. You look at somebody else or something else and then get inspired. And then what happens is, as in when you get inspired by looking at that external entity, that's how or when you go out of your mind. And I hope everybody understands the meaning of the phrase to go out of one's mind. That's exactly the state of poet. He gets inspired and then goes out of his mind. Now who inspires him? That is something that we'll have to look for. We'll come to that a little later in the last point there. So this debate with regard to whether poetry is the craft or simply an inspiration, whether the artist is a craftsman, is he a creator, or he is simply an agent, it still continues, because we are not very sure what is the exact role of an a human in the production or reproduction of art and craft. So not just poetry, but criticism also is divinely inspired. So see, if you see, look at the kind of statements that have been making, it's basically to do with the divine. Okay, a lot of divinity that comes into. So inspiration also is again something that comes from divinity. And if you remember, in the previous class I had told you, Plato does not believe in the existence of God, because he would say, if, anything that anything you believe in beyond your understanding or reason, that would be based on emotions. So religion especially would be you will be basing yourself on a religion, and therefore he says divinely inspired things would something that would lead you to madness. That's why you have this going out of mind, divine madness, because who is inspiring you? It is God who is inspiring you, and whenever he has inspired you, sort of, you wouldn't ask questions. Okay, so all that. Now the scriptures that are present, they are said to be inspired either by the either by God directly, or by angels or Holy Spirit, and all this kind of theories that you have. So for Plato, all that would mean nothing. It would mean nothing, because he would probably put those writers and authors in that category of people who do not have a mind, or who are actually mad. So that's why that metaphor he uses to define and describe the position of a poet, where he is nothing. He's simply a link between that inspiration and the creation. Okay, his role is simply that of being an agent. So metaphor of magnet, God inspires an artist, and artist in turn inspires the audience. So on his own, he's incapable of doing anything. he has no power to do anything. So that's the role of a poet. Okay, poet and poetry. I also so poets lie and ought to be banished from the ideal republic or be heavily censored and kept in check. Now, why do poets lie? Because they don't know the truth. That's simple. Why do they tell you lies? Because they themselves do not know the truth. And literature is basically based on emotions. Basically, is based on emotions. And what are poets reproducing? They are simply reproducing what is already inferior, because the truth exists there in the world of ideas and forms, and they do not have access to that. If in case they have an access to that with the help of their rationality, probably they'll be very close to truth, but then they would not reproduce and disclose it to everybody. That's what we will see in the next slide. Poets lie. They tell lies because, not because they want to intentionally tell lie, but they tell lies because they do not know the truth, but probably they think that is the truth, and then they probably spread it all around. So that's why this goes also to answer Kaushik's one of the questions that he had asked few days back, where he said, if somebody believes in a particular thought, knowing well that that person's thought is not right, why do they believe? This is a simple, because this is a simple argument and answer to that particular question. Poets lie. They don't intentionally lie, but they lie because they themselves are unaware of the truth. So what does Plato? He has a solution to this. He says, don't have poets in your republic, or don't have poets in your nation. If in case you have them also, they should be heavily censored and kept and continuously kept in check. So curb their freedom, curb their creativity, curb their artistic. Censor them. That's what he says. So if you keep them in check, then there is no problem. All art and poetry, because they represent what is already an inferior representation, leads you away from truth. That's the point that I made there. Every art, it's not just poetry alone that Plato is specifically talking of poetry, but for that matter, every art, whether it is painting, whether it is singing, dancing, all art forms you talk of, they simply lead you away from the truth, because it is simply a representation of an inferior thing already. So from this, we also get to a very important phrase that's used by Plato: all reality, or at least all reality in inverted commas in the physical world, all reality in inverted commas in the physical world is at least twice removed from the original reality. Okay, let me repeat that point once again. For Plato, all reality in the physical world, and reality I'm putting in inverted commas, all reality in inverted commas in the physical world is twice removed from the original world. Is twice removed, at least twice removed from the original world. Now, how does that happen? That happens because the original idea, I told you, exists in the world of ideas and forms. Okay, it is there first. It is removed from there, and a particular individual in the physical world is inspired. Probably that's a painter. There's a poet, or there is a singer. There is a dancer, or these artists. I would call them artists. So they are inspired. So first time it is existing there. Second it exists in the mind of these people who are inspired, and then from there it comes out into the real world. Okay, so let me give another example of a chair. Okay, this is a very common example that is given. Now the whole idea of a real chair, or the original idea of the real chair, would exist in the world of ideas and forms to begin with. Now that the idea of that particular chair would be put in the mind of a carpenter. So from one it came to carpenter, second person, and from second person carpenter will give a material existence to the chair. So it is twice removed, first from the world of ideas and second from the mind of the mind uh, of the carpenter. So twice removed from reality. So two times. So imagine, it's not even the second copy, it's the first copy there, then there is a second copy. So the physical world that you see around yourself is almost the third copy of the original. It's not neither first nor the second copy, but it's almost the third copy. So you can imagine to what extent it is sort of distorted. Okay, to what extent it is distorted. So therefore, as a result, what happens? The physical world is inferior, and it's a deceptive mimesis. Mimesis, I told you, is imitation. So whatever a poet or a craftsman or a creator imitates is nothing but untruth. There's no reality, no truth in what he's uh, imitating. What he's imitating. So that was with regard to poets and poetry, Plato's thoughts on poet and poetry. Hope none of you have any questions on that. If in case you have anything, you may please ask. Before I could move on to the next thought of Plato. Okay, and nobody is responding, so let me just go on to the next. These are interesting thoughts of Plato on writing. Okay, this from the point of view of examination, this may not be very important, but something that you can remember for a very long time to come. For a person who has himself written a lot, but who wouldn't promote writing, and he has his own arguments for why people should not write, or who are the ones who write. Okay, his thoughts on writing literature. Okay, and now I told you in Plato's Republic there are four characters. One of them is Socrates. Second one is Phaedrus. Okay, Phaedrus is the second character in the Republic. Now, in the dialogue that they are having, the four interlocutors, the kind of dialogue they are having. Now, this Phaedrus discusses an important on an important topic of the evils of writing. Okay, Phaedrus goes on to discuss the evils of writing. So, if in case somebody writes, what are the evils of that particular writing? And so, from the person of Phaedrus, we also get to know uh, the 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 thoughts of Plato with regard to the art of writing. So Socrates, again, the other interlocutor, second interlocutor that I spoke to you of, narrates the story of the invention of writing. It's a myth, it's a mythical story, but that would give us an understanding of the thoughts of Plato on writing. So Socrates goes on to narrate a story, and what kind of a story that he goes on narrating? He said, "This is Egyptian god Thoth, okay, or Thoth. Both of these are accepted names. Offers King Thamus, this Egyptian god Thoth. He creates this skill of writing, okay, skill of writing, or the art of writing, and he goes and offers this art of writing to King Thomas. Okay, he says, my lord, this is something that I have created, or this is something that I have invented, the art of writing, as a gift, so take this to you. So okay, Theo goes and offers this art of writing uh, to King Thomas. Now what does King Thomas do? Thomas rejects, and this is something that he comments. So beautiful. Please read that and try to understand on your own. Humans are better off without writing because it substitutes an alien inscription, lifeless signs for the living presence of spoken language. Okay, once again, let me read that to you all. Humans are better off without writing because it substitutes an alien inscription, lifeless signs for the living presence of spoken word. If anybody can respond and tell me what exactly do you understand by that? Humans are better off without writing because it substitutes an alien inscription, lifeless signs for the living presence of spoken word. Anybody? From not the ones who regularly answer, somebody else? Anybody, please, quickly. I saw somebody wanted. I wanted to ask somebody. Uh, Salome, what do you understand by that particular statement? Humans are better off without writing because it substitutes an alien inscription, lifeless signs for the living presence of spoken word. Salome, quickly unmute yourself and tell me what you understand.
Uh, so it's like humans, they have vast more ideas than I don't know if I make sense, but
No problem.
vast more ideas than what they actually put it into words.
Okay.
And description, lifeless science, spoken language. Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. So humans. So what you are trying to say, the amount of things that humans know, language is limited to express all that things. Correct? Okay. Somebody else? Anybody else? I'll call out
Um,
somebody's name. Yes. Somebody else?
so,
Yeah. Who is that?
so it's okay. If you want to call somebody else, it's fine.
No, 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 no. Call. Tell me. Anyways, you have unmuted yourself. Tell me.
Okay. So, w- the what James rejects, he says that humans are better off without writing
Mm,
because when you look at it, there is a higher power, and for them,
mm,
human language is something that is beneath them. So,
mm.
and moreover, you express a lot more while speaking than while writing. So, it
How,
is better
how,
off.
how, how do you express more things while speaking than writing?
Sometimes words are not enough to express what you're feeling. Sometimes there are not enough words to try to make a person understand what a thing is.
Okay.
So
So
it
you
is
don't.
better to speak than to write. That is what they
Sir,
are trying to say.
You somebody is saying something. Yeah,
sir,
Kaushik. Yeah.
sir, the main difference between writing, I mean, communicating through writing and speaking is that writing lacks emotion, sir.
Exactly. Exactly, Kaushik. Because okay, I'll come back to that anyways. But Kaushik says writing will lack emotions. Meanwhile, Badri has said actions speak louder than words. Okay, I would be happy to get little more explanation on that if Badri could give me. Meanwhile, I just call out somebody, one more person. Aarti is there? Aarti Gopi. I can see Aarti Gopi. Could you please tell me? Or you could put together what everybody has been saying all this while. Aarti, if she's there, but I don't know. She's listening
Yes,
to me.
sir.
Okay, Aarti, could you just collate everything that these people have said? Kaushik said something, Saloni said something.
Sir, I think that human beings they could communicate much more things but when they are speaking rather than writing, as
Yeah,
someone said that.
yes. Could you just give an
Uh,
example?
Sorry, sir.
Could you give an example?
Yeah, when we are reading a text, it's like it's according to each and everyone's perception where we assume things.
Okay,
So
in text.
if
Oh, you mean the written text?
yeah, so
Okay.
rather than if the author himself is speaking, then he could actually relate things what he thinks.
Okay, okay, good, Aarti, very nice. But you have okay, Shivani. I think Shivani is disagreeing with many of you all. She says, "I don't think writing lacks emotions. It's a matter of how well you articulate it." Meanwhile, Badriya says, "It's a skill that not many has. Many people actually would have to articulate in the best manner possible, and people tend to explain things better while writing rather than while speaking." Okay, so I hope. Yes, yes,
Sir,
yes, Kaushik.
sir, answering to Shivani, like for example, if I write something, it is for somebody to read. And like we discussed in, I think, the past classes, that when we read, a person thinks from his own perspective rather than the emotion of the writer.
Correct. Okay, fine.
So I don't think,
You don't agree with Shivani.
yes, sir, I don't agree.
That's being very plain. You don't agree with Shivani.
So,
Meanwhile, I'll just read out what Angela has written. Meanwhile, that's also again countering Shivani, where she says, when we interact, all our senses are engaged. When we interact, when we talk. Whereas when you're writing and when a reader is reading that particular thing, probably all our senses are not engaged. Okay. Somebody was meanwhile. I think Shivani.
Sir,
Yes, Shivani.
my point was actually against what Ashwati said in the beginning, where she said when she was talking about that particular dialogue
Yes.
quote that was mentioned.
Okay. No, no. Now I want to know one thing from you, Shivani. What do you think? Is it which is more powerful, writing or speaking?
I to say like that, I'm not sure, but then usually people write better than when they speak, because I know a lot of people who do it better while writing. While writing, you can think your think your like think your thoughts through. Use better words. You can go back and rewrite the whole thing so that whatever you're trying to get through is, you know, I
So
don't know if it's
there's a lot of opportunity to sort of work on whatever you're writing, unlike
yeah,
in speech. Okay.
yeah, and
Okay. Go ahead.
okay, no, that's it.
Okay. So meanwhile, Hanina's emotions are poured much more easily when writing than speaking. Cleophas, it depends on individuals, where some can express better writing and some can express better by speaking. Okay. So Cleophas is taking a neutral position where he says some are good at writing, some are not good at, some are good at speaking only. All right. So I still don't agree. Okay, I think that's wonderful of you all to debate, and I'm glad that you some of you don't agree, some of you agree on it. Very good, wonderful, and I don't think we can come to a conclusion with regard to that. Okay, I don't think we will be ever able to. Jack of all trades, master of none. So when you focus on one aspect, you get better content. Okay. Okay. Kavya says every opinion, including Plato, sounds very subjective because the tables turn when you try to think about a person who cannot talk but can only write. Okay. Great. Very good. Yes. Very subjective. I agree with what. Now, what has happened? If you are trying to collate all those arguments that have come from two different parts, where some of you support writing to be much more powerful tool.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, your voice is fluctuating again.
Again, oh my God.
Yeah.
I think some network issue, man. Okay. Ruth says all these opinions indicate that the living or the person that the living or the person is important. Indicate that the living or the person is important. Okay. Ashwati meanwhile has said something. Language can act as a barrier. Not everyone can understand all languages. Okay. If you are using earphones, can you please keep the microphone near? Yes, I am keeping it very close to my mouth, Cleophas now. Okay. So with regard to all the points that you all have said for and against language and writing, uh, let me keep my opinion aside with regard to the language, what I think of writing and speaking, because I would have to definitely agree with some of you and disagree with some of you. With regard to the idea of Plato, he would definitely. Okay, I will give you Kaushik in a while, but please understand this Plato's thought, and then I will tell you what I think of writing. Okay, with regard to Plato, it's very clear that he would say a written literature is nothing but an alien inscription or dead signs. Okay, they are dead signs, lifeless signs. Okay, they are lifeless signs for the living presence of spoken language. So what is written material is alien, is lifeless. So what is alive and what is something that we are familiar with? One thing that is alive is spoken word, and spoken word is alive. So this is a kind of segregation that he's trying to make, where written word is dead and lifeless. So now, by now you should understand, you should be able to analyze or on your own, that if a written word is lifeless, that means books are all lifeless. That's what he's trying to say. I'm just following his argument. I'm not telling you this is something that I believe in. Okay, but if he says books written material is alien and lifeless, that means you should not write. or there shouldn't be any books produced. What should you do? Give speeches, speak. Okay, that's what Plato thinks. That's what Plato thinks. And with regard to what I think of this, I feel uh, there are two things that I will clarify with regard to this. One, I have told this maybe in some classes that I have already taught. If somebody has heard this, it would be repetition. I think some of you also said language is a very limited tool, irrespective of for what it is used, whether it is used for writing or speaking. It's very limited tool, and also subjective tool. Subjective tool, I would explain to you what I mean by that. uh, uh, Limited because somebody said we cannot express everything that we want to express with regard to the intensity of a particular thing that we are trying to express. Subjective tool because what I mean by the use of a particular word and language is not something that the listener understands. That's the first part with regard to language only. But I still feel that a spoken word can be far more powerful than a written word. Okay, that's my very personal opinion, and I have absolutely no problems with so many of you disagreeing with that. Absolutely no problem. I understand one thing for sure, because see what you are doing these days, what we are doing in the past 15-20 days, I'm talking to you all on the earphone only. Okay, with the use of this old tools, I'm trying to talk to you all. It's only something that you're listening, but physically I'm absent, and that in itself becomes such a lot of hindrance to learning. Okay, that in itself will become such a lot of hindrance, because you cannot see the kind of expressions that are generated on my face. You cannot see whether I am angry, you cannot see whether I am happy, you cannot see anything of what I'm doing. I may be sitting here, I must be extremely angry with so many things that have happened, but I may sound very cool, or I may sound very pleasant. Okay, but in the classroom, that is not the case. When your teacher enters, the minute he or she enters, only you more or less looking at the body language of that particular person, you can guess what's the state of that particular person. That's very personal to me. Okay, but I appreciate some of you disagree with me. That's it. All right. So if anybody has anything to disagree, you are welcome to do so. Absolutely no problems. Okay. All right. So good memory is a recollection of spiritual truths through wisdom. And what is this? It's a definition for nothing but philosophy. Okay. So good memory is a recollection of spiritual truths through wisdom, and he would call it nothing but philosophy. That was a random point that I put. Okay. But this is his thoughts on writing. Okay. So I actually already told you a lot of things that are going to come. Let's look at this particular slide. Look at that one particular quote that I have taken. So this is what Plato says in his book Republic. Anyone who is seriously studying high matters will be the last to write about them, and thus expose his thought to the envy and criticism of men. So that means don't write. If in case you still write, what happens, he will tell in the next point that I have put there. So he says, anyone who is involved in seriously involved in studying something very good or high matters, he calls them as high matters, he would not write them down. Okay, because the minute he writes them down, he would be exposing himself to the envy and criticism of men. That's what he says. Now, if in case he still writes, if in case, in spite of knowing that he shouldn't be writing, and if he still writes, what is the reason that he writes? And we come to the point where we had discussed in the previous slide with regard to inspiration and divine inspiration. Okay, books. Look at this. It's a very controversial kind of statement, and I wish many of you do not agree with this particular point. Books do not contain best thoughts. That's his opinion. Okay. Now, if you ask me, I wouldn't agree with that particular point. He says books do not contain best thoughts. Where are the best thoughts? They are stored with fairest of possessions. If they are found, then it is because of gods have taken his wits away. So what is he trying to tell in the simple words there is, books, no author or no writer will express his great thoughts in the books? If he does, if he expresses his best thoughts in the books, then that means gods have taken away his wits, or gods have taken away his intelligence. Gods have blinded his thought process, and that's why he forgets what he is doing, and therefore he puts those best thoughts in the books. That's his opinion. I hope many of you would disagree with that, because we have uh, great books with a lot of great thoughts. Okay, so that's to do with Plato's thoughts on writing and books as well. Okay, so hopefully you all are very clear with that. He does not expect writers to write. Meanwhile, he would say, if in case they write, then it's because gods have taken away his wits, the writer's wits. Okay.
Sir,
Yes. Yes. Kaushik.
what does can you go back to the previous slide, sir, once?
Okay. Okay. This one.
Yeah, yeah. So what
Okay.
does he mean when he says fairest of positions?
Fairest is like the best of possessions. Like for example, if you have thoughts with you, some thoughts that come into your mind after you have reflected on a particular thing, he says you would not put them down in writing and publish that for so that everybody gets them. He would not say that. He would say, if you have uh, if you have some thoughts after having reflected on particular thing, you would keep them as a treasure, okay, to yourself only. If in case by mistake you spread them across people, that means you have lost your mind, and gods have taken away your power to think, and that's why you reveal your thoughts to everybody. Fairest of possession, the best of things. Okay, Kaushik. Okay, okay. Yes, already responded. So Disha says, so great thoughts come only if he goes insane. Actually, yes, very true. um, I agree with you, Disha. For some people, no, I think uh, it is called eccentricity is necessary for the best things to come out. Okay, eccentricity. A little eccentric person is the one who does things very differently. This is what I believe. Yes? Okay. So finally, this is one point, and we have about 9 minutes we have, and so it will be enough for us to complete this. So finally, what is the purpose of literature according to Plato? What and this particular slide with regard to purpose, with regard to imitation, would come frequently with most of the writers. Okay, most of the writers would sort of discuss as to what exactly is the purpose of literature. So for Plato, it should serve moral and social functions, and many other people also talk about uh, literature serving moral and social functions, or in other words, it also means. Oh, I one second. Kavya, Plato himself is sharing his great thoughts while talking about not sharing the great thoughts that one might come to possess. Isn't Plato a hypocrite, saying how he has written books? Isn't he going against his own beliefs? He has just said that. I agree with Shivani. I just saw it. All right, good. So let us come back to this. I think that all that you all are saying, I think we will have a lot of disagreements with Plato, and but let's give him some credit for coming up with some genuine thoughts. Probably if you give him a chance to sort of rethink on all his thoughts, he would probably would want to change some of them. We ourselves, again, this is something that I tell all my classes. You write a piece, okay, or a poem. You write a poem and then keep it for a while. Take the poem after 6 months and check, and then you would want to make a lot of changes there. And then again, to make all those changes, keep it for another 6 months. Again, you would want to change, because as we mature, I think our worldview changes. You know, the way we look at things changes, will change, and everything. So maturity a lot of changes will happen. Probably Plato also would want to change a lot of things. It's ironical that Plato had such strong thoughts about the art of writing, but he ended up being remembered through that very form of language. Yes, sir. Yes, Kavya. All right. So let's finish that. We are going very slow, and we have some 3-4 classes are over, and only Plato is not over still. Okay. Purpose of literature should serve moral and social functions. So what should literature do? It should make human beings better human beings. Okay. It should make human beings better. So it should teach them values. It should teach them good things. So it's called didactic purpose. DIADIC. That's a spelling. Didactic purpose. Didactic purpose is to teach humans good things in the society and make them better humans. So that should be the purpose of uh, should be the purpose of humans literature. Sorry. Now in Republic, what does he say? In Republic, he says in the book Republic. See, I should have italicized that Republic because it is the title of the book. I thought about it and I forgot. But all the books, the titles of the books, when we are typing, it's always italicized. Okay, so that's one small change that was supposed to be made there, but it is not done. In Republic, what does he say? He promotes respect for law, reason, authority, self-discipline, and piety. All these are something that he says. In Republic, he says you should respect the law, reason, your thinking abilities. So not emotions again. So one basic point, if you will have to remember about Plato all through, is his overemphasis on the use of rationality and not on emotions. Authority. So you should be obedient, not going against your authorities. Self-discipline and piety. All these things are. What are these all things? These are something that these are things that are promoted in our society. Everybody should respect for law should be there. You should use your brains. That is what we say. You should respect your parents. You should respect your teachers. You should respect your principal. All these things. And whoever does that is considered to be good. These are very subjective things, but that's what Plato says. And what who should do that? Literature should do that. Literature should teach people how to be obedient, how they should respect law, how they should be able to use their brains. It should discipline themselves and all this kind of thing. Now, where do we find from where do we get this ideas of Plato as to literature being leaning towards morality and social functions and all that? One example is Socrates. Socrates is that I told you, one of the speakers in Republic. He loves Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Again, those are epic there. It's an epic there. Loves Iliad and Odyssey. But what does he say? He calls for censorship on some pages. So Socrates, the character in the book of Plato, in which is titled Republic, the Socrates says Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, great book, wonderful book. But what should happen? We should censor some pages from the book. Which are those pages? Pages which are probably not right for children to read, or maybe which are more seductive in nature, or something that could be misleading, or somewhere where you disobey your parents, or somewhere where you are little chaotic. This kind of subjects should be taken out from the book. So you hope you understand that it's just exactly like how things are probably taken into consideration in our society today. Okay, so you have a filmmaker, but you cannot give him the full freedom to sort of produce or direct or make a movie of his choice. We would want to censor him, just like what Plato was saying. So finally, literature should teach goodness and grace. Okay, so ultimately, when you read literature, it should teach you goodness and also grace. Okay, so it's 10:42. We have about 3 minutes. If in case you have any questions, you may ask, because I don't want to go to the last slide. I'll come to the last slide in the next class because something else is to be done. If you have any questions, you may ask quickly. Anything you have not understood, if you want me to go back to a particular slide, I can go. If you have if absolutely no questions, then we may go. Anybody has? Oh my God, Hanina is already left the meeting. Anybody has anything to ask? Nobody has anything. Okay. Why does Plato think he had the rights to talk about things things that are so divine? 1 second, Ruth. Why does Plato think he had the rights to talk about things that are so divine? Why does Plato think he had the rights to talk about things that are so divine? He is a being of the physical world after all. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else has any question? And that's all the philosophers do. To be very honest, this is the same answer I had in mind. Because what else philosophers would do otherwise? Because you take Aristotle, you take Socrates, you take Plato, you take for that matter any philosopher, even the contemporary philosophers, they would still talk of similar issues. The issues have not changed. Yes, Vishnu. If he is a part of the physical, then he is a mere imitation after all. Absolutely no doubt, Disha, with regard to that particular. So, uh, he would, with regard to the claim that he is making, he would also say that he is also imperfect creature, which is simply an imitation, and probably the perfect version of himself would be there somewhere in the world of ideas and forms. Yeah, that is how I think he would look at himself. But with regard to just one, with regard to Ruth's question, why does Plato think he had the rights to talk about the things that are so divine? Uh, it's not something that he would probably only comment on things that are divine, but I think on the first day when I talked on that, when I had one slide with regard to introduction to Plato, I had just said the number of topics that he talked on. Okay? The number of topics that he talked on. Uh, he randomly spoke on everything under the sun. Okay, and I was sort of talking to you and telling that you could talk on medicine, you could talk on science and everything, biology, whatever it is, he would talk on.
So we can't hear you, sir.
Now is it audible, Kaushik?
Uh, yes, sir,
Okay.
but we
Okay.
wouldn't figure out what was the last sentence there.
Okay, I'll come back to that. So see, I think we on the first class only I told you, Plato basically randomly spoke on every subject. There was no subject probably that was left out from his discussion. That's one. Along with all that, he also has spoken on the divine matters. Secondly, giving back to Plato with the same argument that he uses to sort of address us. Uh, wasn't he ignorant when he spoke the kind of matters that he spoke? For example, of the books. So when he says a particular person believes, or when he says an artist is nothing but an agent who is imitating something that is inferior, why does he do that? Because he is ignorant of it. I'm sure Plato also would agree with his own thoughts and say that he comments on a particular thing because he's ignorant of it. Because at that point of time, he would have thought this is right. Okay, this is right, and that's therefore he would have said that. That's why I said, knowing the world better today, and if Plato would you would have given a chance to Plato to sort of absolve himself, he would have probably changed many of his thoughts, especially with regard to the whole idea of. But we wouldn't be studying some of those people, but there are people who follow. Uh, uh, Follow his thoughts. Okay, still follow his thoughts. Ashwati, I just wanted a clarification regarding your question about humans and writing. Did you ask what we understood from the statement, or what was your opinion of the statement? I had asked with regard to what did you understand from that particular statement. And later on I gave my opinion because because some of you gave your opinion. And Salome, I asked what she understood, and you also made an attempt to tell. I hope you made an attempt to tell what you understood. All right. So exactly 48, I think you would have to go to your next class. So thank you so much. We will see you all in the next class. Thank you.